I like to think that we're going to have a conversation about kindness, but Michelle's actually given me a beautiful segue into this section, which is the last 2 mornings I've spent 90 minutes each morning teaching the personal branding to that same NAB group, the Women in Technology group. So it's been my privilege to do that. Now, before you reach for your program and think, has she got it all mixed up and is she talking about the wrong thing? I'm mentioning that because it's going to give context to why I actually chose to speak about harnessing the power of compassion and kindness tonight. One thing I did learn is that when you're going to speak to people about authentic personal brand is you need to get very clear on what your authentic personal brand is. And we did that through a mechanism which says, I am, I create, I help. And the statement I shared with them over the mornings was, I am passionate about making the world kinder and about helping people flourish. I said, I create by using my strengths, workshops and talks like this to use evidence-based strategies to promote pro-social behaviour and also to promote wellbeing. I help people connect to their authentic self. I help people connect to others. I help affect positive change, and I help people feel a sense of belonging and purpose. And some of them said, wow, do we have to come up with something like that in an hour? And I said, no, that's okay. So why I share that with you is the first bit really. Kindness has become something that I have become very, very, very attached to. And I guess the question I continue to ask myself, and we all seem to be asking a lot of questions today, so hopefully you're getting some answers, we're just asking more questions. But the question I ask myself is, how can we make the world a kinder place? Now that's a very big question, but I guess given the state of the nation, it's a question that I'm not alone in asking. So I did what all people who do research do, and I went onto Google. And I just wanted to share a few things about what I have found out over the last couple of months. And this is, I'm going to share what I know now, and there's a lot more to learn, I'm quite sure. Now, Michelle also referenced that when we talk about positive psychology, often we'll talk about it from a systems perspective, then we'll talk about it from an organisational perspective, and then we'll talk about it from an individual perspective. And that's what I thought would be a good formula for today. So to my delight, Mr. Google came up with this, the kindness revolution. And the kindness revolution was it was just a beautiful moment for me because for the first time ever in 2017, we will see that Thailand will host a kindness summit of world leaders, and they will be discussing how to make the world a kinder place. Now, I don't know how I get a ticket there, but I certainly will be interested to see what the outcomes are. It's really, really exciting. Now, as is often the case when you Google, it takes you down a rabbit burrow, and all of a sudden you get into that beautiful state of flow, and I was learning lots of things about what our systems were doing. It took me to a place that talked about the Singapore kindness movement, and I was really excited that this was on their government budget page, and they had a line item that they were going to spend $5.8 million on developing a kinder nation. Wow, was I excited. Where did I go next? I thought, let's check out the US. Now, I'm going to pause there and I'm going to come back to that later because it was something unexpected. But in the meantime, I thought, I'm going to the Australian government budget page. We're a kind nation, we do great things. What's it going to say? And this is what it said. For those who can't see, when I Googled kindness on the Australian government budget page, it came up with, did you mean illness? And it might not be the prettiest photo, but I just had to share it with you because I don't know that you'd believe it if I just told you the story. So I thought, not all hope is lost. I'll start to have a look at what organisations are doing. And I came across a new acronym called GUM. Now, GUM is ground up movements, and there's thousands of them across the world, not only in Australia, in terms of organisations who are trying to spread the word of kindness and how important it is to us as individuals. We're not called humankind by mistake. I don't believe that is the case. So what I actually found is who else has kindness on the agenda? And there's some fabulous organisations out there. World Kindness Australia actually feeds into the summit that I spoke about that's happening in 2017. We have Wake Up Project. I don't know if any of you know about John O'Fisher, who's doing fabulous work in the kindness space and has pioneered the kindness cards in Australia. We have the Centre for Healthy Minds, which is the brainchild of Richard Davidson at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and he is a bit of a rock star to me. I'll put him on my wish list of who I'd like to meet one day. I've done the Richard Branson thing, I just need to meet Richard Davidson now. But he's doing some fabulous stuff, particularly around some research around kindness curriculums in school, and they're already showing that by kids attending kindness curriculum, by being nicer people, they actually decrease the incidence of bullying, which is a big agenda item. And then the C stands for corporates, because there were too many corporates to mention. But to my delight, when I hopped on a plane in April, and I picked up the Qantas magazine, the April 2016 edition, there was a 3-page spread on why, as leaders, we should be kinder. And I'm happy to share some of the tips of the trade that they were saying could make kinder organisations. But it was really exciting. There was a guy called, I almost want to reference this because it was too good to be true, the Arup principle, and I know last time we had some Arup consultants here. His name is Robert Kerr. And he had been interviewed about kindness in the workplace. I love that. Also a little unforgettable in terms of the name, Catherine Fagg, who is an RBA board member. She was also speaking extensively about how she'd seen kind leaders succeed in their businesses. Okay, so then that takes me down to the individual level, and it gives me a reason to talk about something else I'm really passionate about, which is coffee. So coffee and kindness. Now, I don't know if it's just because this is on my radar and I'm seeking this out, but the more I read about kindness stories, there seems to be, this is not scientific, a correlation, it's a hypothesis, a correlation between coffee and kindness. And I guess one of the things that I saw a long time ago was a pay-it-forward system. Started by John Sweeney, and that was of an old Italian tradition actually, that if you had good luck you'd buy 2 coffees, you'd drink one and you'd leave one behind. And John Sweeney was actually able to roll that out in America, and that it hit about, I think, 40 other countries. People were doing the same thing, and I wouldn't be surprised if any of you have done that from time to time. The next thing that I see is an article that spoke about a lady who had come across from a hospital where she was actually a patient, and she'd come to a coffee shop, and the coffee shop was closed, but the owner was still tending to some duties outside the shop. And he actually opened the door and let her back in. It was only later when she posted on social media that she was suffering postnatal depression, and that's had such a significant impact on her recovery that she didn't know how to thank him enough. And then there's the coffee conversations we have with good friends when we need someone to chat to, and we say, come and let's have a cup of coffee and let's have a chat about it, which extends kindness. Sometimes it might be a wine. During the day, hopefully it's actually a coffee. So this put my radar on a little bit further to my local coffee shop. And I'll explain how I came across this in a moment. This is what draws me to my local coffee shop every morning. As an absolute classic, I don't know who the author is, but a yawn is a silent scream for coffee. And I do a lot of yawning in the morning. By the time it's 10 o'clock, I've had at least 5 yawns. No, that's not true. I've limited it to 2. But the next picture is of a man who makes me smile every day. It's not my husband. This is our barista, and his name is Dean. Now, he is one of the most joyful people I actually know. You go to him, and the funny thing is he's got this tiny little window that he operates from, and it's only open until about 2 o'clock every day. And he shares it with his wife, his lovely wife, Connie, and she's got a massive hairdressing salon. So it works fairly much on the system that my husband and my wardrobe works on. He just gets a little part, and I get the rest of it. But needless to say, Dean's smiling face is propped at the window every single morning. And I've been starting to notice that there is always a massive line, and it doesn't matter if it's raining, it doesn't matter if it's windy, there's a couple of coffee shops down the road, and people are lining up for Dean. So this got me a little bit intrigued. And as I stood there and took more attention of this, I noticed that every time he greets someone, it's with so much kindness and so much authentic interest in what they're doing. So when I kind of floated the idea with Dean that he was going to be a movie star, made a movie star tonight, first of all, he looked a bit off and said, I would have shaved my beard had I known that you're going to take photos. But then he actually leaned into the idea and he gave me this quote. He said, everyone just wants to tell their story and have someone who cares listen. And that's what he does. That's how he actually shows up every time you get a coffee. My husband often competes to go and get the coffee because maybe he just wants that snap of kindness. And my dad, who's recently relocated to Melbourne, he's made it part of his routine. Now, what I'll share with you is that I live in Sandringham, and where I live in Sandringham, there's quite a diverse mix. There's some government housing across the road, and there's people that I see there who will sit in his little area for hours on end. And it was when I was having my hair flash ironed at the hairdresser's one day that this thought about bringing Dean into my story tonight came to me. As I sat there, I looked in the mirror and looked at him sitting with one of the gentlemen from the government housing, just sitting there, sharing lunch, sharing stories and sharing the paper. And I couldn't help but be overwhelmed with joy that this is a man who is showing so much kindness in such a simple feat as making coffee. It's actually a beautiful story. So, to the question, why is he so happy? Now, this is the cause and effect question that we get in positive psychology, which is he kind because he's happy? And there's lots of research to say that that is true. Happier people tend to be more altruistic and commit more acts of kindness. Or is he happy because he's committing acts of kindness? And I'm delighted to say that standing on the shoulders of giants who had this figured out some time ago, that in actual fact, Sonia Lyubomirsky has proven through her research that kind acts can actually cause us to be happier, which is really, really cool. Dalai Lama is also on my list of great people to meet, but I don't know how this is going to happen. We'll make it happen. I'll just dream a little bit. Which leads me to say, this is a quote, deliberately practicing kindness and becoming more aware of your kind behaviour towards other people can positively impact your well-being. And there's also a definition of kindness there for you. Okay. Importantly, it's behaviours that benefit benefit others and make others happy, typically at some cost to yourself. So if you're committing kind acts with the intention to get a happiness kick, it may not be as effective. It has to be in an altruistic way. Okay. So the kindness effect. What else does Sonia Lyubomirsky's research tell us about kindness and how it can impact? And these are a few things that it says. Now, I'm just going to run through at high level that when we're kind, we connect with people. It sounds quite logical. It can give us meaning. When we commit acts of kindness, we can find meaning in our world. Accomplishment. Often volunteers who start to commit acts of kindness start to develop untapped talents and skills that they didn't realise they had. And of course, when that happens, they feel a sense of achievement. It can definitely promote positive emotions in terms of gratitude for what we have, or also when we see other people have positive emotions, that contagion that we get with emotions. It can definitely help our relationships. By being kind to others, we open ourselves up to better relationships. There's no doubt about that. And it can also foster cooperation. It's a heightened sense of interdependence in your social community. So for anyone who's familiar with the PERMA model, you'll start to see some real links to kindness and well-being with some of the things that Sonia Lyubomirsky has found out. There's some other great work. I'd love to go into all of it, but it's not possible tonight. But absolutely, Lee Waters, some of our very own at University of Melbourne, Diane Broderick and Lindsay Oates have written some great articles about kindness. Lee recently wrote about it's not just psychologically that we benefit in terms of kindness, it can be physiologically as well, that there's been studies that show that we have reduced blood pressure, enhanced sleep, lower rates of heart disease, and in one study that had 49,000 senior citizens committing acts of kindness and volunteering, with all other things being even, there was reduced mortality rate by 24%. So that's quite incredible. So we're not just talking about kindness for the sake of the benefit to others. We start to really understand that moment of harnessing power, kindness and compassion being for our own well-being's sake as well, which is really interesting. Here's a little bit of a formula for us, that an act of kindness might see you with a happier mood, more self-esteem and low stress, and this was published as a kindness effect. Finally, just a couple of handle with care notes that I wanted to share with you about the research. And the first one is the right dose. And the way I'd love you to remember this is actually the three little bears and Goldilocks. The fact that sometimes it can be a little bit too little, and in that case we might not actually get the benefits of happiness that we're looking for if we do too little. Too much might not suit us either, because too much might actually burn us out and have us feeling resentful about these kind deeds that we're doing. So it's just about getting the optimal amount for you. Which brings me to the part about the right fit. Not only as a positive psychology intervention being the right fit, because acts of kindness might not suit everyone, but the right fit should be the acts should be larger than what you'd normally commit. And the way I'd like to explain this is that if in the general course of your day you let people in to the traffic in front of you, maybe the act needs to be you need to pull them over and wash their car as well, because that will give you the boost of well-being and happiness that you need. And the third thing is to spice it up. We all know variety is the spice of life, and when it comes to kindness, that's also true, that we need to mix it up a little bit. And if you ever want any tips for kind acts, either call me, or there's lots of information on the website, obviously, that can give you some suggestions. But what I'd like to think is that we're all innately kind anyway, and we can come up with our own ways of showing that to other people. And maybe sometimes it's even as much that it might not be a stranger we need to do kind acts for. It might be ourselves, or it might in fact be our family members who usually get the good and the bad, but maybe sometimes the people closest to us are the ones that need our kindness most. So just have a think about that for a moment. There's another lovely saying by Mother Teresa which says that kind words can be short and easy to speak, but their echoes are truly endless. And this talks to the ripple effect of kindness, the fact that one kind act can lead to another. And I noticed this. The other day I was out running, which hasn't happened as much as I'd like to recently, but running, and I found $5 on the pavement. And number one, I looked around to see if there were any cameras in case it was one of those tests, but I did actually feel this sense of guilt that I was inheriting someone's $5. So I came across a building site and I actually saw there were 5 workers. I don't know how excited they were, but I said, hey, put this towards your coffee. And I saw their faces light up, almost as if to say, are you for real? But then I saw this glimpse of hope that maybe that they would pay that forward. And that's why I love Mother Teresa's quote here. Which brings me back to the US budget website. Whilst there wasn't a line item there was a page dedicated to some of the articles that had been published. Now, this is not new to you, but it's something that I wanted to share with you as a bit of a close. That is the letter that Alex, the 6-year-old, wrote to President Obama after seeing the little Syrian boy sitting bloodied in the ambulance. And for those who haven't heard about it, has everyone heard about that? Okay, so I just wanted to read to you, I don't know if you can read that, it's a little bit wordy, but this was Barack Obama's response, and this is on their budget page. The humanity that a young child can display who hasn't learnt to be cynical or suspicious or fearful of other people because of where they're from or how they look or how they pray, and who just understands the notion of treating somebody that is like him with compassion, with kindness. We can all learn from Alex. That's a beautiful piece. So I guess while the World Forums are doing their thing, the 6-year-olds can teach us a lot potentially as well. And that is the kind of world that I want to live in, and that is the kind of world that wasn't supposed to be a play on words actually, but that's the kind of world I want my kids to grow up in, and I know that I'm sitting in a room of like-minded people who would really like to see that kindness element spread more. So the question is, how can we make the world a kinder place? We're humankind, how can we do that? And it has to start with us, and I think it has to be one act of kindness at a time. Thanks.